I'm here to talk to you today about Agile delivery. So I want to talk about feedback. Feedback is really at the heart of Agile. And you don't want feedback on an idea or a design, though that's really important too. You want feedback on working software. But feedback can hurt. You put a lot of effort into the work that you do. You find the best compromises amongst all of what the different stakeholders want, and you put it out there. And users tell you all the things that they wish they had, and everything that's on their list that if only you could give us this also. And maybe usage is not where you want it to be. So as a result, you get all of this feedback, insight, and you're just trying to make sense of it. Here, my bias is I've been a product owner for most of my career, and so this is very core to what it is that we do and how you prioritize, right? So getting all of that. And so as a result, you may actually try to avoid it, or as we say, really, let's admit it, you just won't prioritize getting feedback. But what we're here to do today is to talk about why that is really important, and that could be your best friend out there. So as some of you may know, we actually use Agile ourselves internally at Appian in engineering. We deliver, while we deliver software to you every quarter, we actually internally upgrade our own internal Appian environment every single week. We use Appian, we run Appian's business on Appian, and every week we do a full upgrade of the production side and to get the latest and greatest features. Actually want to get to every day, so wish us luck. But this is something that we do really as part of our features to get feedback. So over time, we've been doing Agile internally in engineering for a really long time. And over the years, we've refined our planning, our development, our testing, our deployment processes many times over. But I can tell you that in terms of feedback, which is really at the core of why we're doing all of this, it's really only in the past couple years that we really dug into it. And we confronted the fact that if we don't invest in getting better feedback directly from inside the software, we will not really understand how our features are being used. So why are we talking about this now? Well, it's because I know usually when we talk about Agile, we talk about all this, we really focus a lot on the automation aspect of it, all of these other boxes on the cycles here. And we tend to, by the time we get to the end, the last part of it, maybe we get just exhausted by all this. But I want to talk to you today about how you can incorporate and how, without incorporating and gathering data from within Appian, how you really then lose sight of how well are we doing, right? So if we don't understand how the app is being received and your users are actually using the parts that you're putting out there, that you're launching every sprint, how do you know that it's working? How do you know that your planning is working, that your development is working, and that your testing is working? So today, what we'll talk about today is show you how you can gather feedback and metrics from within the Appian product, and that you can incorporate that into your own applications. I'll go through a quick demo of some of the product improvements that we've made that will make you more effective in your development and in deployment. And we'll talk about automations, how you might use a couple tools that we have available for you to automate your deployment and your testing, and to build that deployment pipeline. And at the end, we'll have some time to talk about some additional tips on how you can leverage some external tools such as Google Analytics if you wanted to, in order to gather even better insight on how users are interacting with your system. And we'll have time at the end for some Q&A as well. So let's say that you're building an IT service request app. Right? So the first things that you start with will be to handle some of the most common types of requests that are coming in. But you don't want to wait until you've handled everything, every request type before you go and launch into production. And so something that you might want to do is perhaps to build an ad hoc tasking feature that you incorporate into your app. And so what you ask your IT engineer, let's say, to do is whenever they encounter one of these requests that you have not handled, well, just create one of these tasks directly, ad hoc tasks directly from here to pull in additional subject matter experts or approvers as needed. By doing it this way, this allows you to not wait for until everything is done and really start delivering value into production, having your users use it, and then to get feedback on how they're using it, and not just by what they're saying they're doing, but really what it is that they are actually doing when they're using your app. So how might you now get feedback on this, right? We just talked so much about feedback. This is just quite a small example. Well, you might actually then end up capturing, right, how people are using these ad hoc tasks, let's say as our example today, and build a metrics report such as this in order to see then how they're interacting with it. So for instance, you might want to build out a trend report to show how many tasks are being created and from where. You built in deadlines for these ad hoc tasks, right? Are they being used? What statuses are these tasks in as you put in? So these are metrics that you can actually just use. You're using the regular Appian product the features that you're familiar with, really to build this in. And this is something that's just as easy to incorporate into your app development. And we talked about the tagging earlier, right? Like how you did not build out all of the handling for all of the request types that might coming in. And so if you actually build out a report on this, well, the way that the users are using the systems will end up telling you what are the next important request types to handle. Because as they're tagging these tasks, they're telling you, hey, you know what, Wi-Fi seems to be this issue, or they want more Appian, or going remote might be something that they end up tackling, effectively really giving you the backlog for your next iterations on Appian. You might also capture data usage. And so for instance, let's say if you built in collaboration as part of this ad hoc task feature that you built in, well, how often are they being used, right? 7.2% in this case of 7.2% of tasks have comments in there. Well, that's telling you, well, is it because you thought there will be a lot of collaboration, but there aren't? Or perhaps your UX is not there. It's not as easy to use as you would think, and so people are not really using it. And so with this data, you're actually seeing what people are doing, and then that helps you now dig deeper into the data and to better understand what it is that's going on by talking to your users. You have tasks that's being assigned to people, but some tasks have no assignees, and so you might end up realizing, well, is there a bug in your app now? Why are there no assignees for these apps? So these are the different types of metrics that you might be able to capture just by using the tools that you have already in the Appian product. So some of these that you've built using the tools, that's something that you would incorporate as part of your development cycles. But there are some things that we provide to you out of the box. And one example of this is the performance of that report, right? So this is in the interface designer. You can see we just built this metrics report. And so I pulled up the performance profile for that UI. And that allows you that breaks down where time is being spent in evaluating and loading this interface. So there were a lot of reports actually and a lot of queries in that metrics report that I just showed you. And so right here from the UI, you can see that we can tell you that there are actually 12 queries that's being done for a total of about 600 milliseconds to run all of them in total. But your UI in the end ends up taking around 160 milliseconds to run. And that's thanks to the automatic parallel evaluations of queries that we have in our Sail technology. In our Sail UIs. So you can feel pretty good about that. You can also view historical trends to see how it's been performing over time. So all this kind of monitoring on performance, this is something that we give you and you have out of the box without you doing any work. All right, so we've taken a look at the different types and different aspects of feedback and metrics that you may want to capture in order to improve and to really understand how your app is performing in reality, how your users are using it, not just what they say they want and opinion-based, what they say they want, but really what they are actually doing with the system. So what I'll do now is give you a quick demo of it. Now I won't do a demo of the full life cycle of the product, but let's say that you made an enhancement to your ad hoc tasking feature, and you've already tested it out. So now you're ready to take a look at it and prepare it for deployment. So let's take a look. And throughout this, I'm going to highlight some features that are actually not yet released. You're welcome. You get to get an early view of what we're about to show. Diffing is one of them. So you've seen some early, in 18.3, we released diffing in product diffs for interfaces and expression rules. And the upcoming release, we're going to have that for our integrations objects, for constants, for web APIs, for several more of the objects. We have interface performance monitoring included in the product right now. We've made some great improvements lately in these, and soon we're going to also have record list monitoring coming soon. And also there's been some improvements that we've made recently in how you build your patches and how you deploy them, and so these are also upcoming. So let's take a quick look. Bear with me. Okay, so let's find our ad hoc tasks. I hope you're all using this really quick search, control spacebar. That's the fastest way to find your objects and navigate around. All right, so here I already have a few objects in my patch. I've been collaborating with two colleagues, Rob and Tim. So I've already been saving the objects that I'm working on in the patch as we go. But I'm going to now, let's find, this is a filter that we recently added to allow you to search by the user who made the change. So Tim and I have been working on this, and the fastest way I like to do it is, I know we started working around October 2nd, so let's do that. And we have, let's see, around 11 items in here. That looks good. I'll select all of these, add them to my patch. Let's take a look at it. Now, before we go and export it, let's take a quick look to remind ourselves of what changes we've made to them. So we have a web API. Let's open them, and tasks in list. Let's see. So let's take a look at this web API. We can go to versions, and we can take a quick look. This is our diff, right? That makes sense. I just renamed it, and that's all that I did. And previously, you could not just come in and take a look at this. So we were really excited about this improvement here. Let me close this up. And then in my integration as well, there's a lot of things happening in here. So I know that the change that we did was to add paging. We used to get, let's say if our API was getting every single task, now I want to make sure that we're only retrieving a certain number at a time. And so let's take a quick look at what we did. Right, this looks good. As you can see here, we added a couple inputs. We changed the URL, we added the query parameter. And here I want to highlight why the thing that we're doing and why we're putting this into the product, right? You might say to yourself, well, there are a bunch of diff tools out there. A lot of the things like GitHub, it'll give you these diffs on changes to what you're doing. But because we understand our product, because when these are our objects, we understand what the meaning of each of these fields. And so when we provide it out of the box, then we can give you additional functionality that these other tools that really are text-based diffs can't really give you. As you see, this is not XML, this is not code, right? This is really speaking the language that you're familiar with. All right, so this looks good. Let's close this out. Now I'm ready to export. And download our package. And right here we have our zip that's ready to be deployed to the next environment. I'm not going to bore you with going to another environment, but just here, if you were there, you would click on Import Patch into your app and drag this in, run and inspect. And we show you the changes that we made and the items that were inside that package. So I'm not going to click on import here. All right, let's go back to our... Okay, so let's talk a little bit about automation. Now, we showed you how you can do a deployment from within the Appian UI, how it's intuitive. It's just really right there in the UI if you wanted to do that. But you might actually want to automate the deployment of your application, and that's especially if you have multiple systems that you need to coordinate, that need to be deployed in concert. If you're making changes to your external system that Appian is integrating with, and they need to all go together. So you might want to then coordinate that with a CI tool such as Jenkins. And then we'll show you how you can run your unit tests for this. You might also, even if you don't have so many systems that you're working with, you might still want to automate the deployment and testing of it, because really you want to lower the overhead for every single one of these cycles, right? Because then you would, to build a sustainable process so you can do it over and over and over again. So how might that work? So there's really one tool, the deployment automation tool that you can get. And there are two parts to it. That's the green and the orange squares in here, the versioning manager and the import manager. So your app designers build the app, make changes as they usually would. And then when they're ready to deploy, they'll do exactly what we just saw earlier. They'll create a package with the changes, they'll put that, and they'll export that. And that's where the versioning manager comes in. So after they have that zip, that package that we just exported, they'll now use the versioning manager to push the change to the version control tool of your choice. So that's SVN or Git if that's what you're using. And then on a periodic basis, you would have your CI tools such as Jenkins to pick up the changes that have been made over the X amount of time, depending on how frequently you're doing your deployment. And again, using the versioning manager to package up now an application package that's ready to be imported into Appian using your versioning manager, your import manager. Once it's imported into your next environment at that point, then you might choose to run your tests. So unit tests are how you would run all of your unit tests, which is really the expression rules that you've built, which is where your logic is. So you're able to have your CI tools such as Jenkins run all of these tests. If you're not using that, that's okay too. There's an app on the app market that already has it prepared so that you can run that from the UI if you wanted to. And finally, you have unit tests, but you also want to run some integration tests, and that's the UI testing that we call about, that we using fitness that you can use, and that gives you an easy-to-read report at the end of all of it. So you could really create your deployment pipeline using the automation tool, followed by the testing options that we have. And you can do a combination of fully automated or some of pieces being automated and some manual, really depending on where you are in your process, in your automation, I guess, process. So what I also want to spend some time on now at this point is talk about some other ways and some other tools that you might leverage in order to get that feedback, right? We talked about the things that you could build into Appian and using an Appian report to do it, using really like the tool that you're familiar with. But there are other tools out there that give you this insight into user interaction to get feedback on how people are using your application. And one of them is Google Analytics. And so what if you wanted to get further insight using Google Analytics to get page views and events? So we'll take a look at that. All right, so let's say that you want to see which are your most popular records and maybe by device or browsers, how are your users connecting to Appian? Something that you might want to do then is add a transparent image that captures that page view and sends that to Google Analytics using integration rules. If you're curious, this screenshot is actually from a real screenshot, and it's showing a product use case that we've heard from many of you over time. That is the ability to configure your custom email sender from Appian directly from the Appian UI without a server restart. So I just wanted to point out there that this is coming soon. It has nothing to do with Agile delivery automation deployment, but I thought there were a lot of you that have asked for this, and this is coming. Okay, back to the main topic. So let's say that you wanted to know how users are navigating your UI. Are they browsing for content or are they searching for it? You spent time building both of these, right? You should know then. You should want to know how they're being used. And so that's something else that you could do. What you would do is just add call the integration rule that you built out directly into the button clicks. Add this rule in here, and then that will register the click and send that over to Google Analytics. And finally, then you'll use their dashboard that they've built specifically for that kind of analysis to see how the page flows and events that's being captured here. Really, though, I'm showing Google Analytics not just because it's them, but really it's just leveraging Appian integrations and connected systems in the end, right? And so if you have another tool that you use in your own system, then you can also integrate with that and use that same strategy to capture feedback. Okay, so now that we have all of this great data that we're capturing, it's all automatically happening. It's great, you have your reports, so you don't need to talk to people anymore, right? Maybe not, because really data just gives you insight into something, right? This is how people are using it. But you should also be getting qualitative data just to see how well things are working, or to allow your users to give you feedback and to really lower the barrier to entry. Get qualitative feedback from it. And so how might you do that? So in this UI that we showed earlier, you might notice that we added a little send feedback link directly in the form. This is something that you could do and customize the way that you decide it to be, because this is part of your app in the end. And so the user clicks on it, and you can have a little text field that allows them to right here send feedback to the application administrators, right? And that you collect. Now, as soon as you do this, I have to warn you, you might be very tempted to put a file upload field in here, ask them to take a screenshot to show what they're doing, right? We want to be really careful about this, because your users will be looking at data that's confidential or that's sensitive data in production, and so you just want to be careful about not encouraging them to be sending confidential data over. But a paragraph field with indicating what problems they have or what improvements they might want to see in the app, that's all cool. All right, so to recap, what have we looked at today? So we talked a lot about feedback, and shown you how to incorporate metrics and feedback as part of your regular work in order to be able to get insight into how well your app is doing, because then that's what you can use to improve and see how well your planning is doing, how well you're building out what you need and deploying and testing. We've shown you how to leverage Appian features to make your deployment more efficient. We've shown how you can use automation, what tools are available out there for you to help with automation and to reduce that overhead, and also to balance qualitative and quantitative feedback. You can do that directly in the product or some other way that you might choose. And next, for more information on any of these, Appian Community is the place to go to. The Appian Playbook is there, and that has descriptions on how you can get set up with fitness, and the Appian Deployment Manager. There's been a lot of improvements and fixes that we've made to these two tools in the past several months. So please take a look. And the app that I mentioned earlier about automated rule testing, that's also on the app market. That's also something that you can go and find on Community. And that's it from me.